It all began with a knock that didn't sound like any ordinary knock. It was sharp, demanding. The kind of sound that makes you freeze for a second before you answer. My wife had just come home from the hospital with our newborn, our baby girl, only 5 days old. She was exhausted, cradling our daughter, finally catching her breath after the whirlwind of labor, sleepless nights, and non-stop crying. But that knock, it shattered the fragile peace we were clinging to. I walked to the door, cautious but calm, the way years of Navy SEAL training had conditioned me. When I opened it, standing there wasn't a friendly neighbor with flowers or a welcome gesture. It was the head of our homeowners association, flanked by 2 members, all with stiff expressions. The HOA president, a tall, sharp-faced woman with a clipboard tucked under her arm, looked me straight in the eye and said words that made my blood run cold. "We need your wife to hand over the baby." Effective immediately. For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. Who in their right mind would even think of saying something so insane? But her face was deadly serious. Behind me, I heard my wife gasp, clutching our daughter tighter, her voice trembling as she asked, "What do you mean? Hand over our baby?" The woman explained. At least she tried to. She claimed there was a community regulation about unregistered occupants. Yes, you heard that right. According to her twisted interpretation of the rules, our newborn was technically an unregistered resident who hadn't been formally approved by the HOA board. She insisted the baby couldn't stay in the house until proper procedures were completed. Procedures that she claimed could take weeks, maybe even months. In that surreal moment, I felt a switch flip inside me. I had been trained to stay calm under fire, to think clearly in chaos, and to read danger in the smallest details. My instincts screamed that this wasn't just about paperwork or rules. This was something darker, something controlling. And nobody, absolutely nobody, was going to lay a hand on my daughter. I looked straight at the woman, my voice steady, my stance firm. "You need to leave. Right now!" She didn't budge. Her lips curled into a thin smile as she said, "You don't understand who you're dealing with." I stepped closer, meeting her gaze. "No, you don't understand who you're dealing with." And that was the moment everything changed. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut through. My wife stood behind me, rocking our newborn, her knuckles white from how tightly she held her. The HOA president, unfazed by my warning, tilted her head slightly as if I were some stubborn child refusing to follow rules. "You signed a contract when you bought this house," she said coldly. "That means you agreed to abide by the HOA's decisions. If you don't comply, there will be consequences." Consequences. That word echoed in my mind. I'd heard it before, from hostile interrogators, from corrupt officials overseas, from men who thought intimidation could break a soldier. And every time, the meaning was the same. A threat disguised as authority. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I studied her. The clipboard wasn't just for show. I could see papers clipped under it, documents she thought gave her power over us. Her 2 companions stood stiffly, but I noticed the way one shifted uneasily, eyes darting toward the baby. Not all of them were convinced this was right. My wife whispered from behind me, "What if they try to come back when you're not here?" Her fear was real, and it struck me harder than the president's smugness. She wasn't just scared for herself, she was terrified. Someone might take our newborn away while I was gone. I turned slightly to reassure her, my hand brushing hers. "No one is taking our daughter. Not now, not ever." But I also knew this wasn't over. People like the HOA president didn't back down after one confrontation. She wanted control, and she'd find another angle to push. Sure enough, she leaned in closer, lowering her voice like she was sharing some cruel secret. "You may think your military background makes you untouchable, but rules are rules. If you don't hand over that child, we'll involve the police. And when they see the paperwork, they'll side with us." That was her weapon, fear. She thought the threat of law enforcement would break us. What she didn't know was that I'd worked alongside law enforcement, trained with them, built trust that no flimsy HOA regulation could override. I let a slow smile spread across my face, one that didn't reach my eyes. If you really believe that, go ahead, call the police. But when they show up, I'll make sure they hear every word you just said about trying to take a newborn from her mother. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She hadn't expected resistance. She hadn't expected someone who wouldn't fold. This was just the beginning of the battle. And I was ready. The moment the HOA left, I closed the door and leaned against it, adrenaline humming. My wife sank on the couch, our baby snug against her chest. Her look asked what I already knew. We had to act, not react. SEAL training taught me to assess, decide, act. A mantra that steadied my hands. I started by documenting everything. I recorded a short video of the front porch, through the cracked door, and photographed the clipboard's visible papers. Evidence strips away bluff. I wrote names, exact phrases, times. Small details become proof when memory frays under pressure. Next, I reached out to neighbors. I knocked on a handful of doors and asked if anyone could confirm the visit. Simple witness statements. Nothing dramatic. Most were willing. People step up when a child's safety is at stake. Their willingness made clear we weren't isolated. I called an attorney I trusted. He listened, asked precise questions, and told me bluntly, "Do not hand the baby over. Send me everything." Legal counsel turned fear into motion. With counsel, we could force any claim into a formal process, rather than let intimidation rule the day. In parallel, I tightened our physical security. I installed a basic door camera and changed a few locks. The landlord allowed minimal measures to deter a surprise return. I spoke with the pediatrician, explaining the situation and asking for documentation in case someone raised medical pretexts. The doctor promised to provide records on request. I also prepared for the psychological toll. New parents are fragile. Sleep deprivation makes every threat feel larger. I set shifts so my wife could nap, and I handled phone calls, correspondence, and the mundane logistics that let her focus on recovery and feeding. Protecting family means preserving your partner's strength. Throughout the day, I kept returning to one thought: dignity. This wasn't merely a technical conflict over bylaws. It was a test of whether we, as a community, would allow arbitrary authority to dictate personal life. My mission was to make that impossible. By evening, the house felt steadier. We had witnesses, a lawyer on standby, medical documentation, and a visible security presence. I felt neither bravado nor triumph, only a quiet readiness. The next move was up to them. If they escalated, they'd find a prepared family who would not be bullied. I sat with my wife and our newborn, listening to the soft rhythm of sleep. The fight ahead might be messy, but it was ours to meet. I tightened my hand around hers, feeling the ordinary courage that comes from protecting what matters most. We would not back down. Ever. Period. Truly. The next morning, I wasn't surprised when the HOA returned. This time, they came in force, 5 members instead of 3, all standing on the sidewalk like a self-appointed tribunal. The president was in front again, clutching her clipboard like it was a weapon. Her voice rang out, sharp and confident. "We've filed the complaint. If you don't comply today, there will be immediate action taken against you." Her words carried across the street, drawing the attention of neighbors who peeked out from behind curtains or stepped onto their porches. That was her tactic now. Public humiliation, pressure through spectacle. I stepped outside calmly, closing the door behind me, so my wife and newborn stayed safe inside. My phone was already recording. "Go ahead," I said evenly. "Explain to everyone here what you told me yesterday, that you want to take a newborn away from her mother because of an unregistered occupant clause." A ripple moved through the gathered neighbors. I could see expressions harden, whispers spreading. The HOA president faltered for half a beat, but recovered quickly, barking, "This is a legal matter. You signed the agreement." I cut her off. "No, this isn't legal. It's harassment. And it ends today." I held up my phone, showing the screen. "You're being recorded. My attorney has everything. If you or anyone else sets foot on my property with the intent to take my child, you'll be facing charges. Not me, you. Her face flushed red. She sputtered, but her audience had already shifted. Neighbors were no longer watching me. They were staring at her. One spoke up, loud enough for all to hear, "You're out of line. This isn't what an HOA is supposed to do." Another chimed in, "Leave the family alone. This is wrong." The tide turned. One by one, the so-called board members began stepping back, some refusing to meet her eyes. The authority she clung to crumbled, not because of my words alone, but because community saw the truth. Intimidation only works when people stay silent. The president hissed, "You'll regret this." But the edge in her voice was gone, her power broken. She turned on her heel and marched away, the others trailing after her. I exhaled slowly, feeling the tension drain from my body. The fight was over. I wasn't just defending my wife and daughter, I was defending the principle that family is sacred, untouchable by arbitrary rules. When I stepped back inside, my wife's eyes met mine. Relief washed over her as she whispered, "It's really over?" I kissed her forehead, then looked at our daughter, safe and sleeping. Yes, they'll never come near us again. The mission was complete. Family secured. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if someone tried to pull this on your family? And if you found this worth your time, a quick like goes a long way.